maybe there is a bit of a short fuse there, you know. And I think I've said this to someone else, but like the bits of anger in me. And it's funny, I was watching a video of yours and you talked about there's three levels of free outputs or something. It's like
emotional regulation. Yeah.
Something
express,
something.
Understand, and process.
Yes. And it's very interesting because even when you said that, I was like, do you know what? I feel like parts of maybe the anger in me, maybe from childhood, it was having and without speaking badly about my mum, by the way, but just my parent didn't have a high EQ. And I'm not blaming my mum. I'm just saying I feel like that's a part of it.
Yeah.
When you don't have obviously a high EQ parent, you are then restricted in how you go about even the connection, the explaining, the acknowledging. Everything is affected. So I'm like, wow, this is deep.
Yeah, and that's why I said that. Yeah, that's why I would say that we're in a generation now where EQ is essential. Where maybe our parents and our grandparents, EQ is not essential. What you need to do is survive. We have not got time for EQ.
Deep.
We have to survive. You know what I mean? So the diversity quotient becomes more important because I need to be able to go through the struggle.
Through the roof.
They're through the roof. That's why they're giving us. That's why they're giving the energy they're giving you. They're like, you soft. Right, because they've gone through certain things.
But now we've gone the other way. That's the thing.
Because that's where society is right now. So since the lion is not chasing the gazelle anymore, well, you need to work on EQ. But you wouldn't have had to work on it before because you were the gazelle running from the lion. The gazelle hasn't got time to think about its EQ because it's running from the lion. Once the gazelle can now chill and the lions have gone away and they're no longer chasing them for an extended period of time, then the gazelle can work on the EQ. And that's where we are in society. I think EQ is something that we discuss more in today's society because we have such different threats that are not so much external as in terms of your physical threats, in a sense, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, when you want to maintain a relationship now, you know, you're going to have some emotional intelligence, especially as a man, as a leader as well. You need to have EQ because women have now filled our spaces.
As we kind of like talk the whole EQ thing, emotional intelligence, just a few stats. Emotional intelligence accounts for nearly 90% of what moves people up the ladder when IQ and technical skills are roughly similar. Only about 36% of people in the world are emotionally intelligent.
Sounds about right. And I don't think that's going to change. It doesn't need to change either.
Are you one of those people? Are you one of the 36%?
I think so.
You'd like to think so,
I don't think so. You know what I mean? But I think it's not necessary. It's not necessary that it has to change. Like society.
I hate to be that guy, but I don't think so, man. Everything that I've said, I have wanted to say.
I'm with Jakey.
I'm not gonna lie.
The anger didn't fool what you said. You actually meant what you said. It's just by being anger, but you wouldn't say it anyway.
Yeah. So when I'm angry, I'm the opposite of other people. I get quiet and go somewhere else. Like some people, people response to anger is different. Mine is just to be dead silent because I'm about to snap. Other people's to get loud and, you know, this, that, and the third. Me, it's like, I gotta go. If I don't leave right now, it's gonna be a problem for everybody. So here's what I'll do. I'll just leave. All right. And that was something that, like, the problem that in a relationship, it don't work well because when I'm angry, I may not say nothing, but I'll be inconsiderate and not tell you how long I'm going to be gone. So for example, you piss me off and I know I'm going to go crazy, I'm gonna just drive in the car and go somewhere for like 3-4 days. I'm not answering your call. I'm not picking nothing up. And when I get back, we can have a conversation. But that's what I'm saying. I'm not one of those people that say something that they don't mean. If I say it, I meant it. And if I'm angry, even if I say it, I probably still meant it. And it was just the truth. And if it hurt your feelings, I mean, it is what it is. But I know that there's limits. So when I am angry, if I were to say something, I know for a fact it would destroy them. So I'd much rather just leave for 4 days or 72 hours. I have a measurement in my head, depending on how bad it gets: 24, 72, and 24, 48, and 72 hours. And then sometimes.
Do you communicate with the person that you might be gone, or you just leave and let them figure out?
No. Because if you like, my thing is this, right? Like, I'm pretty respectful. If you say something to me out of your way that you know is disrespectful, because you know it, like people know when they're saying things to get. Then I have no. Why should I respect you and tell you where I'm going? As if that matters at this point, because you don't care enough to stop running your mouth for saying something that really is going to affect me in a way that you think is, I guess, less important. But to me, emotionally, look, if you want to say something emotionally to me that's crazy, then I can do whatever I want to physically. Not hit you. I'm saying, like, let me leave, and I don't got to tell none of you. I'd much rather not talk to you. 4 days. Yeah, if it take me 4 days to get over it because of what you said, then so be it.
Hey, before I go to D-Town, Ceci, do you think that's punishment for a woman? What he does? What? Because the thing is, I usually tell men to tell the person, like, if he's on a constructive basis. Thing when it comes to a woman, a lot of times is ignore them for a while so they can go right back to you and says, I apologize, mom. Screw you guys. I'm going home. Illegal. It goes MIA for 4 days. What you said in one business day, because on Fridays, it's difficult. So on Monday we can talk, that doesn't count. But like in one business day, if he's not back, you are finishing the relationship, because you should be mature enough to talk with me. Do you think like that's what you do? You still break with him?
This is what I said in the beginning.
Speak better than most women. I'm not even trying to be mean about it. Blah, blah, blah. I know I communicate more effectively. I know I have more emotional vocabulary, more vernacular than most women. Right. So if I want to say something to really hurt your feelings in return, I guarantee you would much rather me leave for 4 days than me say what I want to say.
So before Ceci has the chance
to
reply. Go ahead, Lugo. Go ahead.
Hey, Fatty, I'm stirring up the pot.
Here you go.
It's not that big of a deal about the same.
Jesus Christ.
Styles dismissive when you don't actually deal with your emotions very well. So what actually happens is you're disengaging rather than actually searching deep within yourself in terms of how did that person trigger me emotionally. So instead of actually going, let me take some time out, I'm going to take some time out, I need time to go and just process what's happening. 3 to 4 days is a very long time. It is a very long time. Even if you tell me you're going to take 3 to 4 days, it's a very long time. There is not a man here that would accept their wife going for 3 to 4 days. Unless you cheated, you wouldn't accept that. Right? If she came back in, you'd be cussing her. If she came back home, you'd be cussing her out. If she didn't communicate and went for 3 to 4 days, you would be running her riot, and I would not be against you. So what I'm saying to you is that to leave someone for 3 or 4 days to think on their mindset about what happened rather than communicate with that person, what it also tells me, Cheeky, is that it takes you far too long to actually come back to center point. You need 3 or 4 days to recuperate and come back to a level-headed place. You're taking way too long, which means actually how you deal with emotions, you're not as mature as you think you are. And that's not me cussing you. That's me telling you I'm the exact same way. And I had to be called out when I had a therapist call me out. I had to be like, what? Nah, I need 3 or 4 days to recuperate. No, if you're taking 3 to 4 days to recuperate, where you don't have no communication at all, you might want to look at your emotional arousal. Your time for when you're aroused, you stay way too long at the top.
So again,
that's just me personally.
Right, and again, this is everybody bringing their personal opinion to something that I determine for myself. It's not something you can determine. You're not me, right? No, my emotional threshold, my emotional whatever. All right, because
baby, listen, we're gonna have a conversation tonight. Myself and Sean, we're gonna have a conversation. We're gonna talk about whether the modern man is too emotional, or whether we lack emotional intelligence. It's often the key thing that's often said about men in 2023 is that we lack emotional intelligence. We're not very self-aware. We're not very on point, if you want to call it that. But we're gonna have a good conversation today. Okay. You just watched that video. I wanted to have like the montage of video play, and because I thought it was quite interesting, right? The first conversation that we had was myself and a good friend of mine. She's running her own podcast now. Shout out to her. And we spoke about emotional intelligence, and then now we're obviously talking about this particular video, which I had I was on another panel the other day, and us as men were having a conversation. I was saying to the guy, like, if you take 3 to 4 days because you got hurt because someone said something that you felt was rude and disrespectful in a relationship, and you don't talk to them for 3 or 4 days, you might want to check about your maturity that you said you had, and this falls into alignment with emotional intelligence. So we're going to have a good conversation today, myself and Sean, and we're going to break some stuff down from our perspective. But if you're new to the channel, make sure you do me a massive favor. Please like it, share, subscribe, click on the bell button for notification of uploads. We appreciate y'all. For those of you who are returnees, Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. I'm gonna have to click out because I know my internet's trying to bug me out and it's not very clear. So I will jump out and jump back in. So give me a second or two. But let me bring up Sean and get a conversation flowing. How you doing, Cap? You right?
I'm good, bro. I'm good.
Yes, brother. We talking about this topic, and I think it's a good one. In terms of emotional intelligence, and what we, us as people, do we have it in a sense? I wanted you to just give your perspective on emotional intelligence and your experience of it. I'm gonna jump out and jump back in just because my internet is bugging, but I want you to let them know what's your particular thought process on this, Captain.
Absolutely. So, I think it's your ability to regulate your emotions. So how effectively you are at controlling your emotions and not allowing them to dictate your actions. And then I think the other major component of it is being able to understand and assess the people in which you're in relationships with. That could be work relationships, personal relationships, and getting to understand their type of how they react to emotions and their behavior characteristics when they are emotionally charged, triggered, or how they handle information, and then adjusting your style to be more effective in communicating and dealing based on your knowledge of where you are and how you react emotionally versus the people that you're in relationship with. So I think some people naturally have the ability to kind of read the room, assess the landscape, and make those adjustments. And then other people, learn over time if they ever learn. One of the ways that helped me is we did these assessments at work. Assessing our emotional quotient, understanding what our actual IQ is first, and then understanding like the different types of emotional characteristics so that we could be more effective managers and leaders. Because really, and this is where I think that gentleman was kind of going off, is he was like, under thinking that, emotional, regulation is he sees a situation, he gets upset and he leaves. That's probably the best thing to do, but that doesn't make you an effective emotionally intelligent person. The most emotionally intelligent person adjusts their style to the person that they're trying to communicate with to get a better outcome.
Yeah, I love that point, and I think in especially when it comes to relationships, whether it's at work or whether it's relationship wise, romantic. It's about understanding as well that communication aspects, right? So like even though there's 3 to 4 days of him disappearing or whatever, communication should have been had, right? So you let the person know, I'm gonna need some time to recover. Now, I think 3 to 4 days is a very long time personally, but okay, you need some time to recover. Let the person know where you stand, and you may need some time. That needs to be communicated. He didn't want to communicate that because he felt like his feelings were more important than the relationship and the vehicle you're in. And I think that's sometimes where emotional intelligence really does play a big role, that you have to look at the long-term objective of what you're trying to achieve. If the objective is just about you, then you actually miss it. You can be simultaneously selfish, but also selfless, right? Which is when I'm communicating with you, I may have to let you know I'm not in the best place to communicate right now. And so I may need some time to recuperate. Let's have a separation for right now, and we're going to recuperate back in a few hours' time when I've cooled down a little bit better and I'm able to have a better conversation with you. And so that aspect is obviously conflict resolution, but it's also as well about that intelligence piece and understanding that where I am right now and where you are right now may not be beneficial to have a conversation. And that's also fair as well, right? Because you may not want to discuss something straight away. And I think sometimes as men, and I was listening to that conversation, I wish I could have played it more for the audience, but when I was listening to that conversation, the beef became about how they feel. So it's like, I get to do whatever I want because you've hurt me. And I was trying to get them to understand that it doesn't matter what they've done. If you're trying to maintain a healthy relationship, you can't just do whatever you want. And being emotionally intelligent, you have to understand that if I want to protect the relationship, it does mean that I may need to think long-term in my objectives. It doesn't mean I ignore how I feel. It doesn't mean that I don't consider how I feel or even voice how I feel. It may mean that you may need to leave the situation. It may do. but you need to have a conversation. Say, hey, I need some time, and I'm gonna exit this place. And I think that's where sometimes, not all men, some men who lack emotional intelligence, who think they're actually mature in that area, which is what you're talking about, emotional regulation, which is slightly different, which is a part of that, but not is that. Sometimes we suffer because we're like, well, I removed myself from the situation, so I'm good. And it's like, but if you want to maintain a healthy relationship, that intelligence piece is just required.
Yeah, I'm with you, because I think, and you know, this happens often in relationships, right? We want to be right, and we think like, oh, because I didn't do X, that makes me right. And you know, just as I was kind of saying earlier, when he was talking, it's not that it's the wrong thing for him to leave if he feels like the person is getting his blood boiling, because that's probably the best thing to do from a safety aspect, and also for your own aspect. If you feel yourself getting triggered and getting hot, it is smart to remove yourself from the situation. So I think that you know, when you were talking to him, he was getting defensive because he was hearing, well, I'm wrong for leaving, or that doesn't make me emotionally intelligent because I left. You're saying I'm wrong because I leave for days. No, we're not saying that. We're saying that, yes, it is good to remove, but if your goal is to have a healthy relationship, if you're trying to engender good dialogue and boundaries with someone, just leaving without speaking about it, just walking out the door is not going to resolve that issue. And in fact, what you're doing is you're punishing the person, you know. And I think you kind of touched on this a little bit when you were talking to him. You're punishing them just in a different way, because they're punishing you with words by saying hurtful things to you, and you're punishing them with your absence, because it's called stonewalling. When you leave someone when they're trying to talk to you, and you intentionally deprive them of you to prove a point, is called stonewalling. And that's also an unhealthy way of resolving conflict. Again, I don't want us to miss, you know, because a lot of the guys, they'll get stuck at this step one, like, no, but I gotta leave, because if I keep going, she's just gonna make me say something, or I'm gonna do something. Right, bro. We get that. But emotional intelligence, when you use that word, that means you are thinking thoroughly. You are complete. You have a plan. So yes, step one is to remove yourself. But before you get to the escalated level, because the intelligent piece is knowing the person, because this is assuming this is not your first time interacting with that person. So it's knowing that person. So when you communicate, you're already absorbing the fact that, hey, I know that my girl, my wife, whomever, when she talks, this is her style. She's going to go for the jugular if she feels heard or not heard or whatever it is. She's going to go, and then I'm going to feel this. So I got to be 2 steps ahead of her and say, hey, listen, I hear what you're saying, but the words you're using aren't being effective, because right now you're saying things that are hurtful. So we have 2 options. Either, you know, we have a better discourse, you slow it down, allow me to hear what you're saying, or 2, we just stop the conversation and come back to this at a better time before it goes left. That's it. I don't think you were telling him to, you know, figure out quantum physics for her in the moment, because you're not going to do that. But to just have dialogue, let her hear back. And if she's still unwilling, then you go. You know, you don't need to write a 10-page, you know, you don't have to deliver a speech to somebody, but you should say some words to describe what you're doing, because you want to obviously be better. An intelligent person, you want to be a step ahead and navigate the situation better.
Yeah, and bro, listen, I think you touched on something so powerful there. And, you know, it makes me think about, you said the word intelligence, the ability to think. And I think that's where sometimes some men can let themselves down. So this is not like a bashing session. We're actually just having a real conversation, because we understand as men ourselves that things can get heated, and you want to remove yourself, because if you do not, it can escalate, and you don't want it to escalate. You don't win in that way, which is absolutely fine. But something that you mentioned, which is really important, right, is, again, one of the also aspects also is sometimes the ability to be able to give yourself that breathing space to be able to go, you know what, right now you're doing the most. I'm still going to communicate, and then I'm going to remove myself. Now, of course, if the person's about to hit you, that's a completely different situation. But we're talking about someone saying something. And so in the midst of that, someone said something really powerful, I think, on that live. They were like, in the midst of the storm, you should still have peace. And I was like, what the person, that's a bar, you know what I mean? Because in the midst of the storm, I still need to be able to think. I still need to, in the midst of the storm of the madness happening, it goes to our title, and I guess I should put 2 in there, are modern men too emotional? You know, where it gets into pieces, I can't rise with you. I need to make sure that I'm going to stay in a place where I've still got my peace. And in doing so, I need to be able to think in that space. If you're coming at me left, right, and center, I need to have some peace that allows me to go, do you know what? I'm slowing down everything that's happening. I'm not going to allow the pace of the conversation to take me out of pocket. I'm going to keep it at my pace. I'm going to let you know, listen, hey, the conversation is not working for me. Where we're going, we're going to a place that I don't think is feasible for us in a relationship. Let me remove myself. I'm going to need some time to recuperate. Give me a few hours. I'm going to go for a walk and come back. You know what I'm saying to you? Like, you know, going away for 3 or 4 days, even if you don't live together, it's a long period of time. And especially if you don't communicate that, and that's why your description was so perfect, Sean. I didn't even use that word on the live because it didn't even come to me. But you're absolutely right. It is stonewalling, which actually ends up becoming emotional abuse. So that in that instance where I need some men to fully understand, it's not about you removing yourself in a situation that was a problem. It's a lack of communication. And actually, if you remove yourself without communicating, the reason why you're doing that is because you are too emotional. You thought you're not being emotional. No, you're being too emotional because you're not able to contain the emotions and be able to actually have a sensible action during a moment where there's a lot of things going on in that time and that season. See, so when you're able to control your emotions and work through them, when situations do get heated to a point, you're able to know what, let me reason, let me back up, let me go my way. You know what I mean? Let me just, I need some time to recuperate, go away, come back. We'll talk about this later on. Do you know what I'm saying to you? And that takes a level of intelligence, but it also takes a level of emotional regulation and the ability to also understand that you want this long term to work. If you don't, then by all means, do whatever you want. But if you want the long-term relationship to work, friendship-wise, lovers-wise, then there are going to be some hits that you take that you don't run your mouth straight away back. You know, you don't passively, aggressively, like you said, use stonewalling, where you're like, I'm removing myself, I'm going to punish you with my space and my energy, and you're not going to have me access to me for 3 or 4 days. And when I spoke to the gentleman as well, too, then he added extra stuff like, well, in those 3 or 4 days, I'm going to be talking to people behind the scenes, trying to get wisdom. And I was like, well, you haven't done the first thing. The first thing that you should have done is speak to your partner and actually let them know I'm going to need some time away from this situation to recuperate. You get what I'm saying to you? That's what an intelligent person will do when they are in control of their emotions as well. Go for it, Sean.
Yeah, and I'm seeing, I mean, I don't want to assume, but to ask a question, just based on the comments that they're making, it sounds like a man, a fellow brother. And I think this is, we get to this point, and I think this just comes back to the, and I think what the conversation we're trying to have tonight is an expanded view. Right. It's not like, let's just stick to the, we especially on your channel. Right. It's about digging deeper. So, yeah, what he's talking about, this is basic stuff. Right. This is anybody, any Joe Schmo who is reasonable is going to know enough to know if an argument is getting heated, you get out of it before it escalates. Right. But we're talking it's the next level of that, because we're talking about emotional intelligence. We're not really, this is more like common sense. And yes, it is correct. It can get heated, right? Whether it's with us, the opposite sex, so there's times that are going to call for us to remove ourselves from the situation. But we're talking about is preemptive things. This is the proactivity of having a level of understanding of not just yourself, but of the person that you're in communication with, whether it's a long relationship or a short one, but assessing how they communicate and then making real-time game day adjustments to have a different outcome. Because one thing that I even learned from myself, when I was married, right, I realized that although I was right in some arguments, you see the arc of an argument escalating, right? Because it starts with a major disagreement, like you two are disagreeing about whatever it is, could be the smallest to the biggest of things, right? And then somebody says their piece, the other person says their piece, and then it just begins to build. There's a point before that argument crescendos where someone, and it should be, if I'm the man, I'm the leader, and I'm emotionally intelligent, I have the ability to steer that course. It's not going to say I'm going to change her mind, but I could take it from an argument that's at a 4, and I can make it not go to the 10. Mm-hmm. And how you do that is, okay, I know what my wife's go-to, and funny enough, her go-to used to be going hard for the jugular, right? So there, and you know, we all know my mouth can be reckless too, right? So there we would go. So we would just go up the course. And what I had to learn is, you know, hey, listen, I see where this is going. I'm going to dial it back. I'm going to dial it back. I'm not going to go there with you. And it's not to say every time we agreed, but the argument didn't escalate to 10 where I'm being chased down the block like somebody that we've seen recently chased around the street, the New York City streets, right? Because you can actually control that, especially in a relationship with someone that you know well enough, right? You can control it. So I think that's what we're saying is like, hey, know her. If you know that she's going here, hey, before it gets to, if it's at a 4, before you get to the 5, 6, and 7, and then that's going to take it to the 8, 9, and 10, you bring yourself back in and say, hey, I see where this is going, and I don't want it to go there. And that's where we come in, take the ownership. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It doesn't mean you're bad. It just means it doesn't need to get to the 10. And your intelligence, it has to kick in to be strategic enough to say, hey, like we've been down this road before. So what we're not going to do is disrespect each other. What we're not going to do is raise our voices. What we're going to do is calm down till we could have a better discussion. Now, if you want to yell, then you could do that because I'm not yelling with you. That's it. You know, and I think it's that because you're setting the tone for what's acceptable. You're still creating your boundary, and you're still setting the tone for why you're removing yourself. But when you go away for 3 or 4 days, it creates a very toxic push and pull pattern because the person, again, I've done this too, not 3 or 4 days, but I've done this. When you feel power, you feel like power. Oh, I got her. You know, I'm holding back from her. She's hurt. So now it's not even about the argument anymore because she's hurt. Because she wants your attention. She's not feeling heard. So the argument is off the table. You feel empowered because you're like, I'm showing her something. And now all you do is that. The conversation never happens because if she does come back, she may apologize, but she apologizes because she's hurt and she wants you back. She wants the comfort of you in her space. And you feel validated from the apology, but you never resolved the argument and you never got anywhere. And you both never learned a better, more effective way of handling your problems.
Yeah, listen, I think you're speaking some great things here as well. And this is also a part of what I believe the modern man is going to really have to embrace in 2023 and beyond, because, you know, I said it before that our leadership style is changing. You're not going to be able to get away with just being a provider. Now, of course, if you make enough money, you can do whatever you want. But most of us are average earners. You're going to have to work on that aspect in order to maintain a relationship with a woman. And maintaining a relationship with a woman requires these aspects because the relationship cannot just be on your basis. It's on both your bases. And in order to make that relationship float and to go in the direction it's going into, you're going to have to learn how to be emotionally intelligent in these spaces. And one of the things about emotional intelligence, there's some key signs. That's what they said. So here's some of the things about emotional intelligence. An ability to identify and describe what people are feeling, an awareness of personal strengths and limitations, self-confidence and self-acceptance, the ability to let go of mistakes, an ability to accept and embrace change, a strong sense of curiosity, particularly about other people, feelings of empathy and concern for others, showing sensitivity to the feelings of other people, accepting responsibility for mistakes, the ability to manage emotions in difficult situations. That last one is there's a key one, is why we're talking about this situation right now, that there are going to be a lot more difficult situations in a relationship because you're intimate, and the intensity of those arguments really go from 0 to 10 before you even realize it, because people have a lot of investment in that particular relationship. Their hearts on the line. You know, they've gone through certain experiences and stuff like that that play a role in you know, that play a role in why the intensity of someone's reaction can be, right? And so what we're kind of almost saying here is that as a man in 2023, be emotionally intelligent means also, how do I navigate these difficult scenarios? I can't leave for 3 or 4 days. You really just can't leave for 3 or 4 days and not communicate. Like that's not being emotionally intelligent. That's not working through those difficult situations. That's leaving a gap for the person. And Sean, you highlighted it, and I said it in that live, and actually you highlighted it, which means, and you haven't watched that whole live, so I know. I said the exact same thing. I said the argument will shift. The argument after this will not be about how you feel. And I think that's where, as men, I want us to pay attention to. You said it as well, Sean. Set the tone. And, you know, this is really about us as men leading conversation and leading the relationship in the right manner. And I think men sometimes, not all men, but some men get scared about this aspect, not realizing that's actually why the great leadership is actually there. You know, this is why great leadership, sorry, not great leadership, this is why, this is where your power lies, sorry, as a man. This is where your leadership lies in, you know, because you can actually change a whole scenario. You said it, Sean. You know, you can take it from a 4 to a 10, but you can also bring it from a 10 to a 1 in the way that you approach the scenario and set the tone. So if I come back and I say, look, give me a few hours, I need to recuperate, resettle, get my mind in order, and I come back, I've thought it through, I've had some time to think, and I come back into the scenario and I come and discuss with you and say, hey, look, you know what? I don't like what you said. Like what you said, X, Y, and Z, that hurt my feelings. You know, hurt me real deep, cut me deep, and I felt like you went underneath the belt, right? When you explain your feelings clearly and effectively, right, this sets a tone and a precedence for the conversation to come after. You go and leave for 3 to 4 days and not communicate with your partner, and this is a very specific example, but there are other things that you can do. You know, if you come back into an argument, screaming and shouting, if you come back into that house all puffed up and ready to go again, you know, ready to fight or whatever, or, you know, ready to punish your partner almost in a sense for what they've done to you, guess what's going to happen? You're not going to get a good response back. And so when you set the tone for the conversation, it's about breeding understanding. And Sean, you said this quite beautifully as well, that one of the most important things in this is that it's not about being right. And let me tell you something, I've counseled a few couples, and the one thing that trips most people up is that when they're telling their story, they want to be right. It's not about understanding. It's about wanting to be right. And actually what you really want is, I want to be understood, and I want to be heard, and I want to be seen. I don't need to be right. I need to be heard, and I need to be seen. Now, of course, there can be some arguments which are, you know, you're right or whatever, wrong, whatever, right? But when they're intense like this, you want to come in as a man, you want to come in, set the tone for the conversation, because if you don't, the conversation will shift. And when it shifts, you have no power over where it's going to shift next to, right? All you're going to have the power to do is react to what's going to happen next. And what you kind of elaborating on, Sean, was beautiful, because what was going to happen was the conversation was going to shift now from being about what disrespect that you felt that you encountered from her to being about, well, you left me for 3 or 4 days. How dare you? Conversation is going to shift to, well, you were shouting and screaming, acting like a madman in a relationship. Well, you were disrespectful to me. The conversation will shift to how people feel about what happened after, rather than the fact of what actually happened in that situation. And, you know, women might disagree with this, but from what I've experienced, this tends to happen. Women tend to remember how they feel, not necessarily the facts. Their facts become their feelings, and the feelings become the facts. So when you deal with women and you want it to stay on the facts, you don't want to get her in her emotional bag, because if you do, you ain't gonna win that battle. Okay, you ain't gonna win that battle. And again, this is about you wanting a healthy, long-term relationship where you want it to work. You don't want the conversation to shift the Venn diagram and the battleground to becoming about now, well, you know what? The way you said da-da-da, and the way you left for 3 or 4 hours, no contact, no communication, just walked out the house. You might have been dead. You might have been, how do I know? I was worrying, I was anxious. I called your mum, I called your brother, I called your cousins. And now the argument is no longer about what she said to you that you felt was disrespectful. And you can't even get that back. You can't. She gonna make sure that it's gonna be on that disrespect that you gave her, and she gonna remember that, because she's gonna remember how you made her feel. So the impact of not doing this as a man is that you lose out in the relationship of you actually being able to share actually how you feel. So you inadvertently you destroy your own safe space. Go for it, Sean.
Yeah, I think, and again, you nailed the point, and listen, it's not easy. If it was easy, then everybody would possess it. So I just also want us to understand it's not saying that this is, oh, you know, everybody should do this, and you know, everybody has the ability to do it and everybody could just do it innately. No, it takes work, and it actually takes you looking at more effective ways to you know, to manage yourself and ultimately get a better outcome. Because I think really the end goal is having a better outcome. And some of the key things that were in the definition that you read were, it was empathy, right? So the person has a high level of empathy. So that means empathy straight off the gate is the person's ability to put themselves in somebody else's shoes. That's just the plainest way to describe what empathy is, right? So despite how I feel, I'm putting myself in the shoes of the other person. And like attorneys, and this is one of the things that I learned, although I'm, you know, not an attorney, didn't go to law school, I took a lot of classes because that's where I was aiming to go. And I also participated in a debate team. So what you do, like the most effective way to prepare for an argument and legally is to know your other side, to know your opponent and anticipate what they're going to do. So that is the first step when it comes to being emotionally intelligent, is to anticipate the other person. If you're still so locked in on your key point of I'm right, right? You know, there's many opponents in a legal case that their client has been innocent, but they've lost. So it doesn't mean that just because you know you're right, you're going to win. No, it's not about knowing that you're right, that you're going to win. It's about understanding the most effective tactic to win the argument. And in this instance, winning means not having the worst outcome. Winning is allowing us to be able to better communicate and to have a healthy dynamic in our communication. Right. So I think that's kind of like what we're trying to say, is to kind of take some of the heat off of, yes, we understand men and women handle conflict very differently. We understand that. We're not debating that. What we're saying is, if we want to be emotionally intelligent, you're going to have to get ahead of that. So you're going to have to know who you're in communication with and anticipate it, put yourself in their shoes. So you may feel like, oh yeah, I'm right because she was wrong. Let's use the recent example we were just talking about, Don and Ashley and these text messages. He's like, I know I text you. I know I text you. Right? So he knows he texts her. He shows her the text. She's still upset. What is the most effective way to handle that if there's a relationship to be had between the two of them? It is to have a conversation. So if you're going to be empathetic, you're going to say, listen, Ash, I totally understand how you felt. You know, I put my, you know, not feeling like I was communicating with you. I get that. And I'm sorry that I'm sorry you didn't hear from me. I want to help you understand I was communicating. Now, maybe we could talk about better ways of how we can both manage the communication between each other, right? That is more than I did text you and, like, why are you yelling at me? It's like you take the steam off it by, hey, listen, I understand. I could have called you. I could have picked up the phone and called you when I see you didn't respond to my last text. Although I was reaching out, I could have picked up the phone, right? And maybe we could establish a dynamic where, you don't see a response from me and you want to understand what's up. Hey, you can always call me too and say, hey, listen, I text you, a few minutes, a couple of hours ago, I haven't heard back from you, and then take it from there. So I'm just saying, like, this is just a real-time example. Ask a question is on 10. Of how when there's an issue, and even though you're right, you take the heat off of it by putting yourself in the other person's shoes.
Yeah, listen, and I think someone made a comment on my Insta, because I've linked it to my Insta as well, so they're watching it from their side. So the comment that they're making is, men walk away from arguments, it's a losing situation. And I want to address this. I think it's a good point to make, right? Why is that we want men to walk away because of a losing situation? And I want to address it. The reason why I want to address it is because it's not a losing situation. I think walking away is the easiest thing to do as a man, and this is why I'm saying that it's easy to do that, because you don't have the tools and resources to learn how to tackle these issues. See, the reason why you're walking away is because you're not sure how to handle the person in front of you. And this is why the Bible says, dwell with women according to knowledge. You must dwell with that woman according to knowledge. There are some times you have to walk away. There are some times where it's just not working, walk away. But a lot of situations don't require walk away. It requires you to actually have a conversation, and it requires you to actually learn how to communicate in that moment. It requires sometimes for you to pause, because sometimes your mouth is running and you need to pause. I've been in situations with ex-partners, and when I was younger, someone said something and I'm ready to go. Oh, I'm ready to give you the business, because you're hurt by what a person's done, right? And then somewhere along the line, you get a bit older and you're like, it's not worth it, and you just walk away. But then you realize that doesn't also work either, because you come back and then the person's talking about, well, you just walked away, you don't care about me. So now you got that situation. And the reality of the situation is that when you're dealing with people, you have to learn how to conflict resolute, right? When you're at work, you have an argument with a colleague, you can't just walk away. You're going to have to figure it out, right? It's the same with your relationship. There's a need to work things out. And when you start to have the resources and the tools, you don't want to work out, you don't want to walk away anymore, because now you know how to handle it. The reason why we're walking away a lot of times, because we don't know how to handle those situations. Oh, she's going to blow up. And well, she is a person that keeps on blowing up. Maybe this is a relationship for you. Maybe you need to walk away permanently. That's not a different conversation. But if it's a case of where you guys have arguments and you're not sure how to handle those things, the reason why is because you don't have the tools or the resources to handle what's in front of you. And in that space, sometimes I want to just advise this, men. Sometimes shut up. See, when you shut the F up, bro, it's a superpower. Let her go. If she wants to scream and shout, let her go. You're still listening, but let her go. And I'm going to tell you why. Being in a position where you're able to keep quiet and observe gives you the ability to be able to see what's actually happening. When you're yapping away at the same time, guess what happens? You're not listening. And when you're not listening, you have no clue what's going on. And I always say this because I'm talking from a place of leadership, not from a place of being subservient or being a follower. I expect men to lead. So what I'm saying to you is, and I'm obviously, me and you, Sean, we're in the same kind of area, we're in customer service, so we know there's times where a customer comes in and you know they're wrong. Oh, they are so wrong, but you shut up. And the reason why you do that is because when they finish, you can go, I think I heard, what I think I'm hearing you say is, you said X, Y, and Z. Is that what you're trying to tell me? And the person might say, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Well, you might say, well, I really appreciate you sharing that, and I do understand where you're coming from. The policy does dictate that we can't do X, Y, and Z. Here's what I can do for you in that time. These are the options on the table. I don't like it. I do apologize again, but unfortunately, these are the options I have on the table. My hands are tied. The policy is as such, and if you're the manager, you ain't got nowhere to go. But if I'm not the manager, I may say, well, you can speak to the manager as well. I have no problem. And they can talk about it, right? When we are in customer service, what we're trying to do is that we're not trying to necessarily appease, we're conflict resoluting. We understand that the customer is angry, frustrated, and hurt. And even though they're wrong, we're still in a position of shutting the F up and listening to what the person says, because I need to be able to understand where you're coming from, which is what Sean is trying to elaborate on, that knowing the opponent's argument so that I can actually have a conducive conversation going forward. It's not only my point of view. This relationship is not only me, it's me and you. You see things differently to me. So whilst that argument is happening, sometimes just STFU. And when you sit in that place, just watch what the other person does. And when you relate back to them and say, is this what I'm hearing? Okay, I'm hearing what you're saying. And it's actually a form of servitude. And this is where people can mess up in relationships too, because I've done it before. We are so hurt by what's happened, we don't want to serve anymore. So in that moment, I'm not going to serve you, and I'm going to punish you, is what Sean was saying at the very beginning. I'm going to punish you. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to listen to you. I'm not going to hear what you're going to say. I don't care. But actually, if you sit in a place where you're like, okay, I'm hurt by what's going on right now, I ain't going to lie to you, but I'm going to serve you in this moment. I'm going to listen. I'm going to let you go on. You pop off. All right, you're saying, is this what I'm hearing from what you're saying? It's what I mean. And what you should realize about me dealing with women and having to deal with them on a regular basis, as well, and dealing with them on a regular basis is oftentimes the argument, and I'm not saying it all the time. A lot of times the argument can be solved by just me listening to what they're saying. Like, they want to be in that moment. I told you it's about how they feel. So when they're feeling like they're not being seen and heard, I need to just go, do you know what? Let me just listen to what you guys are saying. All right, cool. She said what she said. All right, cool. Boom. Then when I said, okay, I think I've understood you now. Do you feel like I've understood you? You answer, yes. Okay, great. Can I now share what my perspective is? You create the safe space for yourself. And sometimes that means you going first. Sometimes that means you sacrificing your need to be right. Sometimes it means sacrificing your ego. And this is not us being a doormat. I want you to understand something. There's a difference between being a doormat and you leading a conversation. I never asked you to lay down on the ground and let her walk over you. What I said was control the dynamic of the relationship, set the pace and the tone. I'm going to listen to you first. And when I've understood you and you feel like I've understood you, I'm going to share how I feel too. Right? And I want the same thing from you. I'm not going to interrupt you. And I want the same back from you. I don't want you to interrupt me when I'm talking, and et cetera, et cetera. You set the tone. And then she follows your lead from that. And women really do respond to that when you do that. I promise you, women do really well to respond to that. You know what I mean? I don't know if you want to jump back in, Sean.
Yeah, I think you touched on some very key things. And I think one, it is, listen, if we want to be leaders, and we want to be respected in our relationship, heavy is the head that wears the crown. So this is what it taught. This is the unglamorous part about being a leader in your relationship. And it is learning how to resolve conflicts effectively, and you understand who your person is. So you understanding that is and you knowing your own self, having a level of self-awareness. So knowing what triggers you, what upsets you, what gets you going, and then having balance to know, okay. So I think that's step one. And you touched on a great point about the customer service aspect, right? Because we were taught a technique. I don't know if you were as well, but it was called feel, felt, found, right? So I understand how you feel, right? You empathize, right? I too have felt that way. Or, if I woke up in the morning and I saw a negative $300 on my account, I would feel just the same way that you felt, right? And next step is, hey, let's look into your account. Let's see, what transactions took place. I found that this is the best way to research that, and let's come up with a resolution, right? So it takes the steam off of, you acknowledge the person, you already are 10 steps ahead because we already know what the issue is in a lot of times, but you're acknowledging the person. How many times have I had clients come in and afterwards and just apologize? I'm sorry, I know I lost my cool. Or guess what? If they're cursing and screaming and yelling at you, hey, listen, Kojo, do you mind if I call you Kojo? I really want to take care of you today, and I want to help you. I think I have a resolution for the situation, but when you're screaming and yelling at me, I can't help you. So in order for me to fully help you today, I need you to not yell and scream at me or talk to me in that manner, right? That's it. It's a firm boundary. The customer's like, no, you're going to blah, 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 blah. Sir, I'm going to have to discontinue the conversation, right? Kojo, I've asked you a couple of times. You continue to yell. You're cursing. I can't help you when you're talking to me like that. I want to help you, but maybe you need to calm down. I'm going to end the conversation. That's it. Now, if the person says, okay, I'm sorry, whatever, but if they're still cursing, carry on, take care, have a great day, that's it. Nobody expects you to sit in a place where somebody is railing you and you're trying to resolve and be calm with them, right? And in this instance, obviously you're not going to do that with your girl or your wife. You say, hey, listen, babe, asked you a couple times. You keep yelling, you keep going below the belt. We're going to have to talk about this either later or tonight when you're a little cooler and you can hear what I'm saying, or it's going to be tomorrow. Okay, it's going to be tomorrow, babe. That's it. Nobody is saying that you have to say, oh, you're so right and I'm so wrong. No. And that's, again, we're talking about relationships where you have an investment. So empathy means that you love that person. So long term, you see a future with her. So it's not so much about this right, this wrong, right? We're going to play, Kanye West has a great song, old song called The Blame Game, right? So we're just going to play the blame game back and forth. You get nowhere when you do that, right? You don't get anywhere. So if the outcome that you're looking to do is have a better, more healthy communication and to have a better way of resolving, that's the way you're going to teach her, if that's not her dynamic, right, of how we're going to navigate this relationship, right? And I think it comes that you have to put on more of your softer skills and say, hey, you know, I hear you, but this is what we're not going to do.
Yeah, and you nailed it on the head as well. And I think Professor Ozzy has a comment which I think is good to address. Says, I don't believe in a leader means taking full responsibility for something that's not your fault. My pushback on that is that it will always fall on your neck. Like this, and I always say this because the relationship, right? If we're leading the relationship, it means I need to lead in these instances. That doesn't mean I always apologize. That's not what I'm talking about. So again, we're not wanting to be a doormat. What I'm saying is model the right behaviors. See, if we're talking about dealing with women, and the Bible says dwell with women according to knowledge, one thing I know about women is this, and I've experienced this myself, right? Shout out to the ladies who know, they know I've had a run-in with them before, right? One of them, which I love this girl to bits, man. We're friends now for life and everything, right? Our very first early conversations was all good. We were debating, doing back and forth, and then at 1 minute she just blew up, blew up, and I mean blew up. I was like, wait, what's going on here? I said, what's going on here? And the phone got cut on me, and I said, what? Nah, I was ready to send the message like, and I said, hold on a minute, it's a lesson to learn. What do I want to achieve from this particular situation? Do I want to let her know that I can't be messed with and I can't be played with? Do I want to let her know that, you know what, actually I hear what she's saying, you know, but maybe the way she's doing it is also affecting me? What's my end goal in this situation? And I had to ask myself that key question. So what I did next was I messaged her and said, listen, hey, look, I don't know what's happened here. It seems like you've ended the call, or maybe the call ended. I'm not really sure what's going on. Right now, I knew she ended the call, but I'll have to play a little bit dumb. Then she gave me the paragraph of what she felt. I said, hey, listen, look, I don't really want to text. Let's just call, and then you tell me how you feel, and then I'll be able to explain where it's gone kind of wrong, right? We phone her, we start talking for the next hour or so. She explained how she felt, and I said, you know what? I absolutely hear where you're coming from. Now, I don't agree with the way that you dealt with the situation. I said, you know what? My only issue is that you put down the phone on me. And when you put the phone down on me, it showed me a distinct lack of respect. And for me, that is not how I undo my relationships. I don't work like that. That's not what for me is. And I said, I like peace in my life, and that's not how I'm going to lead it. If that's how you want to lead it, then this is not going to be the place for both of us to be. We can go our separate ways. She's like, no, that's not how I want to do it. And let me tell you some of the words that she kind of said in a rough about a way, that she said she felt like it was a safe space. And that when we had that conversation, she didn't feel like I was judging her in that moment or trying to say whether it's right or wrong. She just felt heard and seen. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I was just thinking to myself that I just didn't want it to be a mad situation. Do you know what I mean? Like I was trying to do my best. But when she said that, I said, oh, okay, I'm getting it now. I totally get where she's coming from. Because your first instinct, because a lot of us have been taught this. If this is what I got taught from a young age, is from my dad especially, like, if that happens, you are going to get bollocked. If you think you're going to get away with that, you're not going to get away with that, right? And so my natural instinct is, if you show me disrespect, I'm going to literally lambast you back. But I've started to learn, if I want to keep long-term relationships, this doesn't work. You know, that authoritarian piece of work doesn't work in relationships. And also, people have feelings, and you have to acknowledge that sometimes those feelings crosswire with how you feel, right? So when I provided her that safe space, and she felt like she'd been heard in that next hour or so, she allowed me also to then to have a conversation going forward too. So we had a conversation, and we had a talk, and then that's what's actually made our friendship so solid going forward. Because, you know, when you start to realize that people are fighting you oftentimes because they're re-experiencing past traumas, they're re-experiencing past experiences, they're seeing you as their dad or their mom or whatever, a past person in life, whatever. And sometimes the argument's much more fiercer because they're dealing with history and not you right now. And so you are literally representing what they felt like in the past. So if you go in there trying to swing a bat and try to hit the person back because, remember, you're dealing with your history too, guess what's going to happen? It's going to be cyclical. It's going to be cyclical. I'm going to try to hit you. You're going to try to hit me. Someone needs to break the cycle. So as a leader, I call for men to break the cycle first, because what's going to happen is if you do this well enough, I promise you, she will return the favor. I promise. If you got a good one, anyway, if you got an abuser, then she ain't gonna do it. She gonna keep abusing you. Okay, so that's a different story. Okay, you need to know who you are. Okay, all right. So so in reality, my biggest thing is this, right? That when it comes to leadership as men, you model the right behavior, because what you're doing is that you're teaching the other person, this is how I roll. And women love men that are disciplined and have and do exactly what they say. So if you say, I don't like doing the beef stuff and I don't like getting into madness, guess what's going to happen? When you decide to stick to those principles, she's going to either fall in line, and when I say fall in line, follow your lead and say, do you know what? I've seen a better way. He does it a better way. I'm not going to do that. Or she going to have to be like, I can't do this. And she's going to stay in her toxicity, and you're going to know what the relationship is. So it's about modeling. The relationship, modeling the behavior for the other person, because and many of us, I remember one of my girlfriends at the time, back in the day, she didn't like arguments. Like when it gets to an argument, and I used to love an argument because that's when I'm gonna hit you with all different points, and she's like, listen, it's got to a place where I don't want to argue anymore. I don't get pissed. Why are you stopping the argument? After a few weeks, I just couldn't do it anymore. She wasn't going to do it anymore. Guess what happened to me? I started to learn that's not the way to go about it. Yeah, that's not the way to go about it. I need to change the way I'm going about it, because that's not effective anymore. So people need to model behavior, and I promise you, if you've got a good one, she will start returning the favor and start giving you the same grace. I think sometimes as men, we are afraid that when we lead in that space, that we'll be taken advantage of, and she will keep on trying to abuse the grace that you're giving her. Well, then that's not the kind of person you're actually chosen to marry, and you probably need to look at who you married. If you've chosen the right kind of woman who is sensible, she is going to be able to okay, I've seen he's giving me grace now, I'm going to do the same thing for him too. You know what I mean? Model the behavior. Go for it, Sean.
Yeah, and I think, when we talk about leadership qualities, right? Like, what are good leadership qualities? Because we get this leadership word thrown around all the time, and a good leader is somebody that is adaptable, right? Is somebody that is also influential. And I think the points that you and I are talking about are things that are going to influence people, because it's 2023. There's no way we're going to get in a relationship with a woman and we're just going to say, hey, listen, this is how we lay it down and this is it. And she's just going to come willingly along. Now, might you find that? Sure. But that's the needle in a haystack. Most women in today's times, it just doesn't work that way. Right. And most of us want a woman that can bring things of value, that can show us other things. Like you mentioned, the woman that you were in a relationship with, she was able to show you something. Right. So a leader doesn't mean like, oh, you're beyond being taught a lesson. There's an openness. So I say all that to say you're going to win somebody over by influencing them and by them being allowed to see you and how the way you operate is in the best interest of the both of you. But if I'm just shouting to the rooftops, men are better at this and women are not, and women are better at, caring for the kids and having babies, and men are better at, going to work and building and taking care of things and running businesses. So we get together, I'm going to do that and you're going to do this. Yeah, you're going to be met with a lot of resistance, because that the woman has no buy-in to really work with you, because that just sounds like servitude to her, right? So you want to influence by saying, hey, listen, we're going to work in this together. And you think about leaders of the country, right? The most effective ones are able to work in concert with their own enemies, right? But to prevent the war, right? So we don't want nuclear war. So we're going to have to make some concessions. So obviously a relationship shouldn't be nuclear warfare, but it's the same concept of we want the greater good. And if the greater good is we don't want to blow our household up, we don't want to blow our relationship up, there's certain things that we can make concessions on, right? Is it really that serious? Is there, do you really value her? If you don't value her, you don't feel like she values you, you do your laundry list and you say, hey, look, XYZ is here and this is there, and my list that things are positive is short and the negative is long, then you need to just, you need to bounce. You need to bail. There's no need to be gone for 3 or 4 days, be gone forever. But if you see value in the woman that you're in relationship with, you're gonna make concessions. How many times do you make concessions? Like, I really don't want to go here. I really don't want this, but it makes her happy, so I'm gonna do it. Same way in a conflict, right? I really feel like she's completely wrong, but I don't want this argument to escalate and make us have a bad time, right? So let me just dial it back and hear her out what she's saying, and just to kind of land the plane, just the same way with the customer. When you allow somebody to talk, when you let someone know that you're listening to them, it takes the steam out of it because their defenses are down. If I'm constantly telling you you're wrong, no, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. No, that doesn't make any sense. What you're saying is wrong. This is what you did was wrong. No, nobody's going to hear each other. So that's where you are able to allow them to speak, hear their point out, and you do the same.
Absolutely. I think you nailed it there as well. And I see that Ask a Question is in the chat. So I know he's got a lot of points about this particular case he's got about men forgiving women. And I think even that, I think even that is part of the reason why I want to have this kind of conversation, right? Because the focus is wrong. Like for this conversation, listen, he's given us this particular topic or whatever, right? We're talking about men leading and being emotionally intelligent. I haven't mentioned that women aren't bad or the good. I'm not mentioning that. I just said about us as leaders, as men. What do we do when it comes to emotional intelligence and being present in our relationships, right? But the focus is shifted to being about men. You are greater forgivers than women, and it's like you've missed the whole mark. And then that is what we're talking about. That for me is what we call HCP, right? Highly conflictual people. Those people want to prove that they're right, rather than trying to get to a place of understanding. None of this conversation has been actually about blame. It's been simply about how do we address the situation and lead it in the right type of way. We're not blaming women. We're not blaming men. We're saying as men, this is what we want to do. We want to make sure we step to a place where we lead a situation, because we've learned that by not taking a leadership role in this area, we actually leave the thing open to be interpreted any particular way and any particular how. And in that place, I actually have no control. In that place, I have to receive it however the person takes it. And in that place, you leave it as a free-for-all. And what I've seen is free-for-all don't work. And if we're men that we can say, and this is me specifically tackling red pill and manifest token points, they normally say that we're the most logic people as men, right? And let's say I agree with you, then we need to show it. Which means that if I'm the most logical, when it gets heated and it gets emotional, I can't join you in that emotion. But what I'm seeing from someone like Ask Question, and I'm not trying to out him, but I'm outing him in some sense, is that you're focusing on the fact that you are getting emotional and getting annoyed about the situation. I'm saying to you, you have every right to feel how you feel, but we need to do what we need to do, which means I need to set up the safe space. I need to take control of the situation. Okay. All right. I need to get further along and say, hey, look, understand her emotions, understand, manage, perceive, and reason emotions. And this is about dealing with women according to knowledge. And that also means perceiving, understanding, reasoning, and managing your own emotions. Okay, all right? So that's what I'm saying as a leader in that space. I want you to look at that position and go, I want to take control of that and actually lead in that space. And actually, take control of those conversations so that we can get to a good, positive result. And I'm telling you that for a person who's actually done it and seen how it actually works. And actually, I've had more peace because the way I navigate conversations now, I'm not navigating it to be right or wrong. If something doesn't work for me and I know it's really bad for me, I'm just not going to I'm not going to entertain it. But if I know that person cares about me and I care about them, I want a long-term relationship with them, I want to our friendship to survive or our relationship to survive, I know I have to play some ball. I know I have to surrender my ego. I know I have to surrender my pride and say, do you know what? It's not about being right. It's about being understood. And so if that's where your ethos is, you have a better chance of making that relationship work. If you want to be right, by all means, you go ahead. You're going to be men go your own way, and you're going to find out it's a lonely road. Okay? You're going to find out it's a lonely road. Yes, Sean.
So just to, because I just want ask a question to have a full understanding of the conversation today, right? Because we want to bring this brother in, because the idea of this conversation is to broaden our mindset as men, right? And it has to start from a base level point of feeling like, can I do things better? If you feel like you've got the market cornered on how to handle relationships effectively, then maybe this conversation is not for you, or just one you could just listen to, because the intended audience is those of us who are like, hey, listen, these are some things I've learned, and these are some things that I'm doing better to have better outcomes when it comes to my communication, right? But if you feel like you have all the answers, then hey, you might have it right. And if you can find someone that aligns to you with that pathology and way of working, then hey, more power to you. But when it comes to emotional intelligence, it is highly documented. What we're talking about is not off the top of our heads. It's well documented in psychology today, right? So the definition that Kojo just gave at the top of the discussion is in Psychology Today, right? And again, these are some key components, and I think it's worth revisiting so we understand what we're talking about. Emotionally, intelligence is generally said to include a few skills, namely emotional awareness, so being aware of yourself, the ability to identify and name one's own emotion, the ability to harness those emotions and apply them to tasks like thinking and problem solving, and the ability to manage emotions, which include both regulating one's own emotions when necessary and helping others to do the same. So, a lot of what we've talked about, which I think is getting some pushback from, some folks, is the helping the others. So the last part of that is, right, the main key components is one, really knowing who you are, right? Knowing who you are, regulating your own emotions, being in charge of that, having an awareness of what those emotions are, what drives you, understanding what other people's emotions, and lastly, the ability to help manage those situations, right? So how you're going to more effectively manage those situations, the intelligent part is by learning how to navigate when and where, when I push and pull, when do I push back, when do I exercise empathy, when do I listen versus respond. That is what someone who is looking to have emotional intelligence will do, right? So if we take his point of women handle their emotions, men are more forgiving, right? And women are less. So if I know that the woman I'm in a relationship with is less forgiving than I am, then that means I don't want the emotional temperature to get to a place where her emotions are riled, where it's going to get to a point where she's unforgiving and it becomes hurtful, right? So that's why I want to take the steam out of it, and I want to make sure I know what I know, and I don't allow it to get to that point, and especially for me, right? So I know that I have the ability to hurt her with my words, and she's going to be less likely to forgive that. So I'm going to constantly be in control of how I operate, how I communicate, so that it doesn't get to that level. Doesn't mean perfection, right? But you're going to manage yourself to the ability where you're less likely to hurt her with your words, or less likely to do those things which are going to elicit a bad response.
Love that, man. And even reading from Emotional Intelligence on verywellmind.com, some of the things it says: impact of emotional intelligence. The goal of these initiatives is not only to improve health and well-being, but also help students succeed academically. Well, let's get apart. Thinking before you react. So emotional intelligence, thinking before you react. it helps have greater awareness and an empathy for others, which you said about Sean, right? But that thinking before you react is where I wanted us to, is where I keep saying for men, because it's again, I want you to get to a place as a man where you're able to understand what specifically is going on in the situation, right? We want you to understand what's going on. We want you to be cognizant of what's going on. I don't want you to be moved by the moment. I want you to understand what the moment is and then be able to react. Because this is like when you talk to somebody who knows how to fight, right? They train specifically so when they get in the ring, they know what to do. You get in a ring, you get punched, and all your plan goes out the window. Why? Because you never had a plan in the first place, okay? You thought you was going to go in there, raw emotion, start throwing some punches, right? And then suddenly you're undone because the person's laying it into you. Good fighters know that training is important for the day of the fight. So when you get into a relationship, the day of that argument that happens, you started training yourself on how to handle conflict. That's what we're talking about. And conflict is not about being right at the end, because we're trying to maintain the relationship. So importantly, it doesn't matter whether men are more forgiving than women. It doesn't make a difference. What is the important thing is, what am I going to do as a man? Am I going to make sure that I'm understanding? I'm going to think before I speak. I'm going to think before I react. I'm going to make sure this relationship is going to be maintained well. And that means I've got to make sure that I got to make, like you said, Sean, make some concessions. There are going to be times where I'm going to lose the battle because I want to win the war. And by the way, whilst I'm saying this, it doesn't mean your partner is doing whatever they want. Your partner will be watching and observing what you do and learning from it. Okay? Right? I have female friends and they will tell you, look, oh, I love the way that you are patient. They're observing. So it's not like they're not listening and learning. And they're like, I learn from you. I try to understand where you're coming from. A woman that you've chosen, you should trust that you've chosen a wise woman who is smart and intelligent and wants to grow. If you haven't chosen that for yourself, maybe you need to look at who you're choosing, because any man or woman that you're choosing should want to grow, should want to be able to expand, and should have the ability to be able to observe and at least see and make changes. And so if you've chosen the right kind of woman, again, that doesn't mean that relationship is going to be absolutely perfect. It just means that that person is going to be observing what you do. And if they see that this particular result is a good one and it's done well, they are going to follow suit. So it's not about who's right and who forgives more, who doesn't forgive less. It's really about that leadership piece and modeling the right behavior, which I said earlier on in the very beginning. Go for it, Sean.
Yeah, and I think like this is one thing, and you remember we were talking with Jay and Seaway, and we were having that conversation about the men's panel, right? And they were just sharing with us some things that they disagreed with, and us constantly telling women what they should do, right? And I think there's a time and place for men to air their grievances and say, hey, listen, when women do this, it makes me feel like that, or when a woman does this, it makes me feel like that. And I don't like that, and I notice this is a characteristic trait in women. There's a time and place for that, but that can't always be, right? I mean, especially we're talking about emotional intelligence. The concept, and I've read the definition a couple of times, and Ask a Question keeps hitting these same points that you talked about an hour ago. Emotional intelligence is not about telling women what they're doing wrong. Actually, it's the antithesis of emotional intelligence, because emotional intelligence is you controlling yourself and using your knowledge, your intelligence, your smarts, your capabilities, and influencing and changing dynamics and changing the scenario. It's not about you telling somebody else what to do. And I think that's the difficult part. And this is what I learned in years and years and years of managing people. And at first, you say it when you get that manager hat. And I remember when I first got my promotion, you just think people are going to fall in line because you got the title. It don't work that way. And yes, can you really legitimately, yes, can you, fire somebody if they do things egregious enough and you can get rid of them? But if that's how you walk around leading, then you're going to always have turnover in your staff. And anybody that's ever managed or been in a business and worked for somebody, we hate turnover because you have to replace them, you have to train them, then you have to worry about, do they have the capabilities? It's the same, it's the similar behaviors that are required. Yes, you don't work for your spouse, but this idea that I know something and I'm just gonna, people are just gonna fall in line naturally because I know I'm great. It doesn't work that way. You have to influence. You have to show people the value in being in relationship with you. And it takes time. Like our friendship that we have as a core is built up over now 3 years, right? Going on 3 years. And we've learned lessons. We've had bumps and scrapes, but I can say today we're at a much better place of working through conflict. We know how to talk to each other. We can call each other out if need be. And it ebbs and flows because we've built up the value. It's not because Kojo, this is Kojo's channel, and I listen to him because it's his channel. It's because I see value in what Kojo brings to the table. He sees value in what I have to share. I see value in Jay. I see value in Seaway or any of the other panelists that have been a part of this platform. So we're able to kind of work together in a cohesive fashion for the greater good. And that's what you want in your relationship. You're never going to win if you're always trying to use your data and facts to back up your point. That's the worst thing you can do. You can enter into an argument because now, yeah, that's the time when you have to exercise your softer skills. Because if you approach your argument with your woman and you start bringing up facts, well, I'm more forgiving and you're less forgiving. How's that gonna, like, where are you gonna go? Where do we go from here? You know, so I just want us to kind of like, the idea is to get better. The idea is to do things differently. The idea is to get to that next level.
Yeah, and you touched on some things, and just looking at our history, the last 3 years that we've been friends on, and we've had many arguments ourselves with the ladies, and we had a lot of those kind of run-ins, right? Like I said, it's a case of, like I said, listening and just kind of trying to understand where they're coming from, right? At the beginning, it would have been like, no, don't want to hear it, da-da-da-da-da-da. But it's affording the space to be able to be heard. I may not agree, but I will afford the space to be heard. And the reason being is because, like I said, once we begin to understand where the person's coming from, and I understand where your points are coming from, then I can begin also to say, actually, wait, hold on, there's some things that may be great, but actually some things as well we need to say we're not gonna budge on that. Here's what we're trying to propose to do. And you need to be able to understand that person's point of view to make them feel seen or heard, because doing that too many times where you remove someone from a space of being seen and heard, they're going to build up resentment. So you're not dealing with a robot, you're dealing with a human being. And like I said, myself, even just listening, even listening, just even trying to improve myself, I was even saying that, for me, does every woman here agree with me and you, Sean? No. And we understand that. And we know that, right? But one of the beautiful things that we can do is model behavior that we want to see going forward. So, for instance, when we take the issue, and we always use this example of having that situation with Married at First Sight, where we got heated to a point where we lost sight of the actual argument, and it became about, this is how we feel, I don't care. We need to let them know how we feel every week. And it just became about having a battle every week, that you actually lost sight of what was actually happening right in front of you. And no longer was it about facts, it was well about feelings. And now I'm in my feelings. And I always say this, at one point, I remember saying at the beginning of the live, today is a fight, okay? These ladies gonna know, okay? These ladies gonna find out this week. We ain't gonna have it, okay? And at that point, why am I feeling that way? Because I've now made it about feelings, not facts. And so now the conversation on the thing is going to be heated. And it did get heated a couple of times, where it becomes a warfare rather than a conversation, right? And that is because I didn't set the right tempo and the right pace and the right tone for the conversation. I don't blame the ladies, I blame myself, because as a leader, it being my channel, this was on me to make sure I regulate me. You understand what I'm saying to you, right? Now, learning from that particular space, what we learned to do was, we can't get so invested and so heated to the point we miss what's actually happening. Because in the end, partly we were wrong. We couldn't see the error of the gentleman that was on the show, because we got so consumed with trying to talk about how we felt but we missed the obvious facts of what was happening on the show. Right now, you can sit here as a man and get annoyed and say, "But what about the women?" I don't give a heck about them, because at the end of the day, listen. At the end of the day, I've got to make sure I'm in alignment first. If I'm in alignment, they're gonna follow your lead, right? And we've seen that as we've changed the way that we move about our business. Yeah, sure, we might have a few more run-ins, but the reality is we've seen how the crowd reacts now. It's a different space, right? Now when people come in and they start saying some wild stuff, they end up defending us. Why? Because we've set a tone and a precedence about the way that we want to go and handle our business. I don't talk with disrespect to women. They don't talk with disrespect to us, right? When women come into the space and they're disrespectful, it's other women checking the women. I don't even need to do anything anymore. And you know what I'm saying? And when men come in and disrespect, we can handle it and check them as well. And women will check them too, because we've built up a reputation and built up trust that this is the environment that where we're in. We don't like disrespect. We don't like people coming in and trying to be rude and disrespectful to other people. I think when Anton came in, he tried to come in the chat one time, Anton, and tried to be reckless, and the chat handled him quickly. Why? Because we set a presence that no man, no woman, doesn't matter who you are, you cannot disrespect the other party. And that's actually what you do in relationships. There's a culture that you build. And I know some people are saying that, work is not home. Work is absolutely home. You take some of the skills from there and you transfer it to your relationship. We build cultures in businesses. You build culture in your relationship. What kind of culture do you want to build in your relationship? What's our ethos? What do we abide by? What's some of our rules that we abide by? You may not have the 3 C's, but you have something that shows that this is what we do. And so when you have that in your relationship and you're the man and you're leading the situation, it actually helps you too, because it reminds you, hey, just before you fall off, we have said the culture here is, let's not do that. So we're going to remind ourselves and come back onto the track. And that saves me and that saves her as well in a relationship, because she also knows that I'm not a lawless citizen. I am a law-abiding citizen, and I'm not above the law. I also abide to the law. Right? For us as Christians, that would be God. Some people that whatever it is, the rules that you guys make. But either way, she now knows she's not dealing with a lawless individual. And some of you are lawless. You just do whatever you want, and that is painful for the other person receiving that, because they know that you can do anything. That's scary. If you've ever worked in a business before where that business is unscrupulous and they do not abide by any laws, meaning they can do anything to you, how do you feel? Being in a relationship where someone has no rules, no regulations, they have no higher authority above them that they abide by, it's a scary thing to be in. So as men, we also want to abide by the same rules. In fact, I want to enforce those rules upon myself, just as I do for you, to make sure that everybody plays by those rules and everybody ends up being safe. Yeah. Any other last thoughts there, Sean?
Yeah, no, I think and the basis of all of this, it's based on human behavior. So, in some of the scenarios, you and I were talking about, some of them are work-based scenarios, but the attributes, the skill set, it is all about human behavior and how to handle, and be more effective at human behavior, and you'll see those standards, and the standards and the way to manage it, they're definitely more applicable. And I can tell you, I've had more effective outcomes in conversations when I've de-escalated, when I've listened, when I've tried to hear the other person's side before going in, than not. And again, with people that I have an investment with, right? If it's just Joe Schmo, I just met you 2 days ago, 2 seconds ago, and you're coming in hot, sometimes, we just need to move our, if you're going to just come in hot, there's no need for me to, have all this time and, go through the motions, right? But if it's a relationship worth an investment, then you engage and you use those softer skills to handle the conversation in a better way. And I think that's exactly what we're talking about, right? Is to be more focused on better outcomes, right? Not so focused on what's right in front of us, but seeing the next steps. And I think when we talk about being logical and men being strategic, that's the strategy. right? It is dialing yourself back, being self-aware, knowing who you're in relationship with, and adjusting and moving and adjusting your style to that of that person, to have a better outcome, right? Doesn't mean you're saying you're wrong, I'm right, vice versa. I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right, whatever it is. But it is adjusting and making those real-time game day decisions in the moment to exercise control and then have a better outcome.
I love that point. Love that point. I guess we'll bring it to a close here, but because I think the next one we can talk about is, and it just came to me because women often claim that that they take on the more emotional load in a relationship, friendship wise, right? So when it comes to men and female friendships, women often take a more emotional load, and so I would love to discuss that maybe on the next week's breakdown between myself and yourself in terms of our experiences with women in friendships. And again, it won't be a bashing session. It's more about our experience, but also as well about how I believe that we should lead those relationships and how we should go into them as well. And I think it will be a good conversation to have as well, but on the back of this particular one. But I'd love for you to give a conclusion, Sean, and bring this conversation to a wholesome close.
Sure, absolutely. I think, really the ultimate discussion here today was about getting better outcomes in our relationships. And as men, for those of us that esteem to leadership or want to sit in the leadership seat in our relationship, understanding that it requires adjustments, it requires change, it requires us to also have a level of self-awareness. And to have not just the level of self-awareness, but also have an awareness of the women that we're in relationships with, and be okay with being wrong. There is nothing wrong with being wrong sometimes, if the greater good is to be in a happy relationship. And sometimes we may take those L's, and it may not look good, it may not feel glamorous, but at the end of the day, what's the outcome? Is it a healthier relationship? And we're not just about winning that one fight, but we want to win the war, right? And we know right now there's a war on relationships. We are warring, and not being successful. Marriages are failing. I can attest to it. I was in one that ended, unfortunately, in divorce, and we don't want more of those. So what we're calling for is a change in action. And as men, if we're going to lead, then we're going to start with us and what we can do different to get better outcomes.
Love that, Sean. I think we'll probably end up doing it a few days early, because I know 24th. It's the 24th next week. I didn't even realize it's almost Christmas time. So I think we'll do it probably during the course of the week. Actually, have this conversation, just maybe like a Wednesday. I think that'd be a good time because we don't do anything on Wednesday. So maybe on a Wednesday after evening, we can do this discussion part two, kind of the extension of it. But yeah, I think it's really been a really good conversation. Actually, I think it's been really helpful to discuss this, especially for the men. And I can see one or two men coming into the chat. And listen, look, we're gonna keep having these conversations. I know you may not agree right now, but you know what? I'm committed to having more discussions because I want to see more men come into the space, and I want to see more men improving as well going forward. I want us to get away from just blaming women. Let's get into a space where we're able to resolve and bring solutions to the table and do things better, and bring excellence as well. So I think this is a good start going into 2024. It's been a really good conversation. The next one will be part two. I think we'll do it Wednesday. What's your schedule, Sean? Is that like a 7 o'clock? 7 o'clock is it good for you?
Yeah, that works.
Yeah. Cool. Let's do it 7 o'clock then. Because then we can do it before Married at First Sight comes on at was it 9 o'clock? What time is Married at First Sight coming?
I think 8 o'clock, but I let the
So
commercials
you do it
run through.
6:30?
No,
Okay.
7 is good because what we do, like an hour and a half.
Yeah, an hour and a half. Okay, cool. Then. So we'll do at 7 p.m. EST time Wednesday. We'll do a part two of this. We're going to talk about whether women are taking more of the emotional load when it comes to male and female friendships. So I'll put up the poster. I'll do it definitely behind the scenes, and we're going to commit to try and do this every week as well, because I think we just need to have more of these conversations between us as men, and build up other men as well going forward. So shout out to Seaway and Jay, because you know they'll be on our necks, so they want to see us do better. Okay, so we gonna bring better for them. Okay, so if you're new to the channel, make sure you like, share, subscribe, click on that bell button as well. If you're a man here as well, please listen. We're gonna keep doing these going as well. Whether you agree or disagree, keep turning up. We want to see more of those men come in. Okay, and for the ladies too, thank you for joining us and sharing your perspective. I know sometimes it may be warfare for you in the chat with some of the man them. You know, listen, we want understanding, not to be right or to be wrong. All right, let's keep it going. We appreciate y'all. Stay locked and stay loaded. We'll see you again